Oh, now this is good. Yes, well, I can already see that it's recording both of our audios now because I've hit record and it says two.
Aha,
Now I assume that that's just going to work. So
wonderful.
let's just go with that. Woohoo! That's a great start.
Well, I will
Ah.
do. I will do this a third time. I will commit to that. I promise you.
What about a fourth? Come on,
Mi-
please.
I don't know. You're gonna have to send me some Pringles in the post.
Fine by me. Okay, let's get on with the podcast, shall we?
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to In the Pocket, the bass guitar podcast where we get the lowdown on the low end. My name's Johnny, a totally average bass player, and each week I'm joined by a different co-host to talk all about that bass. Oh, so this week has been a very dramatic one because this is the second time recording this, wouldn't you believe? The first time we had a couple of technical hitches, which we realized after we'd recorded the podcast, which is, great times. But I'm thrilled, to be doing this again because I'm joined by the wonderful Chris from Dead Romantic. Chris, how are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me for a second time. You did tell me. You did tell me after we finished recording this the first time that I was welcome back for a second episode. I just didn't realize it would be 2 days later.
It's been so soon. I was like, I need you back straight away. It was such a good
Immediately.
conversation. You're back on. Here you are. No, I could just say that to everyone, Chris. To be honest, and
I
I just had
understand.
to, yeah, just had to get you back on. Anyway, so for those that don't know, Chris is an awesome bass player, playing in the band Dead Romantic, who are not that old of a band, but are like skyrocketing, doing so well. Lots of endorsements in there, which we'll talk about later. All the gear and all the idea as well, because you guys are doing so well. You started like first quarter of the year, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks very much for saying that. But yeah, I think the first single yesterday came out in April. It's September now, so it's been a relatively short amount of time. But since then, it's really started to pick up momentum, which is obviously exactly what you want for
Yeah.
for a new band. But yeah, it's going. It's going really well. That's probably the best way to describe it at the moment.
Yeah, so happy, and it's no surprise because you guys sound awesome. So the single "Fight Me" has recently reached over 100,000 streams, and yeah, all really well deserved. And there's some incredible bass tones within there as well, which we'll talk about later on.
Oh, you.
Yo, you stop it! Come on. So we like to ask our guest 3 questions when they come on here. So the first one is 3 words, Chris, to describe your bass playing.
Well, I am going for alliteration for this answer. I'm starting off with percussive. I'm a really big fan of bass guitar and bass guitar parts. Really locking in with drums or locking in with guitars or complementing vocals in a rhythmic way. So I'm going with percussive as the first one. I'm also a really big Tool fan. So Justin Chancellor's bass parts always really like complement Danny Curry's drums. So that's kind of like a really big thing for me in terms of like the percussive element of bass guitar. I might be a drummer in denial thinking about it.
We've all got it in our blood somewhere.
Absolutely. Second one is punchy. So as we're going to see, I like a big bass sound. That's kind of what I'm aiming for, at least when it comes to a bass guitar tone. But from a realistic perspective, like I don't want to step all over the drums and overpower the guitars and all these sort of things. It's got to serve a purpose, but I want that bass tone to be really, really punchy. And that actually transitions onto word number 3, which is practical.
These are all words that I can live by. Practical, I'm guessing that is meaning like serving the song, going up that fretboard when it needs to, but holding it down in the segments where you're needed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in a band. Dead Romantic is a band where there are just
It's a band.
well, it's a band for a start, and then there are bits where it's just got to be big, and it's just got to be as impactful as possible in those right moments. And if you're a bass player, I think you can make or break that. Like if there's a really heavy riff section and you decide now is the time for me to do some chord work up on the 14th fret of the D string,
Nice.
some delay,
So,
it's not gonna work. Like you can make or break that section. So sometimes you've just got to be practical and copy the guitar, but lower and really add some weight. Other times, maybe take that low end away and play something a little bit higher up, higher register. So it's bigger when you come back in, or maybe a different tone, like play with a thinner tone for a couple of sections. But if you're thin there, it means when you go back to the big sound, it sounds even bigger, like dynamics. I probably should have used dynamic as a word, but I'm
well,
too practical.
you had to have the alliteration, and
Absolutely.
you can't have that. I love all three of those, and Punchy is just one. I don't know why I didn't think of Punchy for mine when I did the first episode, because every tone I approach, I'm like, it's got to be punchy. It's got to punch through that mix. I don't want it to kick through. I want it to punch through as hard as possible. And doing that with quite a high presence tone, or just filling the gaps in the EQ that mean that you can really get out there and be noticed in sections that you should be, and like I say, serving the song throughout. I love those three words. The next question is, what is your number one bass?
This is a very simple question with a very simple answer. For me, my number one bass is my Godin RG4, or Godin, depending on your outlook on life. It's a Swamp Ash bass, nice bolt-on neck, maple neck, PJ configuration, which is kind of, I know you're a fan of as well, but that's kind of my cup of tea. EMG pickups, so it just sounds massive. End of. Really great neck, nice and chunky enough to have a bit of girth in your hand, but nice. At the same time, though, really playable. It's kind of like a slightly thicker jazz neck, but it's really nice. It plays great. It's a very harmonically rich instrument, and by that I mean when you play it unplugged, it kind of sings a little bit. You can feel the notes resonating in the wood, which not all basses do that.
No, absolutely not. Like I took my Sterling Stingray and my new Court / Sandberg Arona to band practice the other day, and they both got humbuckers in the bridge. I basically just wanted the Sterling is my normal go-to for Nova Mora, and then I was just wanted to try the new one out as well. And very similar pickups, very similar positions, big chunky bridges on both of them. It just doesn't resonate through the wood, that bass, the Courts, and you can hear that when it's unplugged and plugged in, just nowhere near as full sounding, nowhere near as warm and rich. Like you say, being harmonically, that's a word. Harmonically rich is what you really want, and you can tell when you've got a bass unplugged if it's really resonating through that wood, and if it's got nice quality components. That sounds like it's ticking all of the boxes for me as well in terms of like what I look for in a guitar. I mean, if I was just to have one, it would probably be a PJ with a slightly chunkier, like modern C jazz neck. Not quite a jazz bass, but a bit thicker, leaning towards a P bass. Like you say, get your hand around the girthy wood. And that sounds awesome. And it looks incredible as well.
It is a pretty bass. It would make a great dining room table, I think.
Oh, for sure. Well, the grain on it. I saw a picture today. That grain looked incredible.
I've taken the scratch plate off, which I thought they'd shout at me for, because now it kind of doesn't look like the retail model. But all I've done is taken the scratch plate off, and it's the great thing about it is it's been beautifully finished across the entire body. So there's no compromise with taking the taking that pick guard off. And it just looks a little bit more 80s now. I've taken it off, which I kind of like.
Definitely. And I really wanted to get I quite like Stingrays without the pick guards on now, depending on the color, of course. But they did this like quilted maple one, and the majority of it was covered up with this pick guard, like a black pick guard. And I was like, get it off, put or like a transparent one on there or something, and you can see this whole finish underneath, which looked beautiful. Anyway, and enough about that. The next question for you is, why did you pick up the bass?
Well, it's a really cliched answer, but I genuinely did fall into being a bass player because I used to be, and I'm somewhat ashamed to admit this, and I'll lean in and whisper this to you. I used to be a guitarist, like
what?
6 strings.
That's too many, or one too many.
Absolutely ridiculous. So I've been a guitar player since I was 12, 13. I went to see Metallica when I was 13 and basically immediately asked for a guitar minutes after leaving the arena. So that was very much my introduction to heavy music. Apart from the one time someone put Cowboys from Hell on by Pantera, and I was like, what the hell is this?
Get this in my veins.
Yes, beautiful. Give me that fizzy solid state guitar tone any day. But yeah, I was a guitarist from 13 to 24, at least 24. And then I'd been in bands playing guitar, lead guitar, a lot of rhythm guitar. And a friend of mine needed a bass player for a couple of shows he was doing with his band. And I told him, well, I'm not a bass player, I'm a guitarist. I've got ethics. And I'll happily help you out, but I don't want to be in the band. I'll just help you out for these shows. And he was like, no, that's perfect. That's what we need. So I borrowed a bass off the drummer and did, I think it might have been 2 or 3 shows with them. Really enjoyed it. The music was kind of like Flyleaf. So I really enjoyed being in that band with a bit of a Deftones influence as well. And while I was there, the singer and drummer of a different band were there just kind of to support the acts. And I ended up playing 2 shows with that band, and they were at both gigs, and they told me, oh, we're actually looking for a bass player, like an actual bass player. And I thought, oh, go on then. Like, I quite enjoy doing this, so I'll just do it, and I'll play a bit of guitar in my other band. And I just ended up on this journey of basically I became a grown-up and realised you only need 4 strings. And obviously bass is the most important instrument. So, I just carried that on for the last few years. And now I barely revisit my former life as a guitarist, and it's bass all the way now.
Yeah, grew up, became a big boy, realised what's important in life.
Now I play the big guitar, the baritone ukulele.
You've got it in ukulele tuning as well, I assume.
No, absolutely not. No, and I will never be doing that.
Well, that sounds, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, because sadly it's, most people get introduced to the guitar and then you move on to bass when they realize what's good for them. So that's
exactly
great stuff, and I'm sure that's the same as me pretty much, but less experience on the guitar. I should be better at bass. Amazing. So we've got to know Chris at the start. Let's move on to our first question. This question came in on Instagram, and it says, how did you settle on string gauge, and are you married to a brand? So what tuning is Dead Romantic in?
2 different tunings. Well, Guitar Land is 100 different tunings, but bass always the way. But bass tuning, I do about half and half. Half of the album, and as a result, half of the live set is in drop C. Mm-hmm. And then the other half would be done on a 5-string, but because I've got little tiddly hands, I use a 4-string bass, and it's tuned down to B, E, A, D. So B, E, A, D and drop C.
Nice. So some heavy string gauges that are needed to accompany those bad boys. I think I remember from last time, is it a 120 gauge that you're running on the is that on the C?
You are absolutely correct. So on the C guitar, it's a 120 gauge. I can't remember what the higher side of things is, but it's the Diodario nickel pack. I think it's an orange. I think it's an
Nickelback. I love that band.
Nickelback. I am actually a really big Nickelback fan, to be fair. But I will talk about Nickelback all day, every day, if you let me. But the bass itself, yeah, it's the nickel packet. It's orange, and the lowest string is a 120. I know that for certain.
I'm looking at a set right now.
Go on. Tell me
that
more.
is also what I am using at the minute.
Ooh.
But the 105 version for a standard tuning, an E or maybe a drop D, I might go down.
I have actually done rehearsals. So when I got the go down, it came with a 45 to 105 gauge set, and it was a pretty new set as well. So I did a few rehearsals with a 105 down to drop C.
Ooh.
And I can get away with it. I had to pick near the bridge a little bit more. I could get away with it for a rehearsal situation or maybe a little bit of recording, but live, absolutely no chance. Like I need that 120 live.
Those strings are going to be flat and about.
Exactly. And I know everyone says this, but I absolutely do pick very hard. Like, I batter basses live. Like, I have broken picks. I've not broken any strings yet, well, bass strings, but I really do give it a wallop. So I need that higher gauge, for the lower tuning.
Battering them like cod in a fish and chip shop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm the same, but I'm in drop D normally, and the 105 is okay for that. Oh, it's fine. Down to drop C, that 120 must feel hella tight and sound really tight as well.
Well, I could potentially go a little bit heavier. Like, I have been tempted to try and find a way to put a 130 on it. So it's a 5-string tuned up one note.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you take a really heavy string and tune it up a little bit or put it under a lot of tension, you get the tuning stability and you get the intonation, but I feel like the sound is compromised a little bit. A lighter gauge string, obviously you've got to find a balance, but a lighter gauge string will sound better, but that thicker gauge string just sounds a bit flubby to me. No, flubby's the wrong word.
Yeah, well, that's probably, the string's probably not moving as much, so there's not as much vibration. So that, probably explains the sound difference there. It's all about just finding the one that works for you in terms of getting that nice middle ground of it being tight enough, it's not flapping about, and it sounds good. With Diodario, I really like this brand because I found I started off with Ernie Ball, and I just found that they died too quickly. I like that fresh string sound, and I just found I was paying out of my bum for new strings all the time because they just died too quickly.
Yeah,
and I'm a very sweaty boy, so I've got to have some durability on that.
I'm lucky to get 2 shows out of a nice new fresh set of strings, and then
that's it. And it's not the same. You can't just like turn up the presence and treble.
No, I've tried. I've really tried. It doesn't work.
So then I went to Elixir because I heard that they last a long time, and they do. They are really durable, I found. But my God, like, it didn't off balance the cost. They're so expensive.
No, really?
Yeah, it was like 40 quid a packet.
Whew.
I know, insane. But they did sound good, but it wasn't worth that money for me, I didn't think. So then I decided to try out Diodario, and I kind of go between the nickels and the Pro Steels. Pro Steels are a bit brighter, and yeah, they were just that nice middle ground. They were just a little tiny bit more expensive than the Ernie Balls, but I found that they last way longer.
Yeah,
and yeah, I've not looked back since, really. Well, I say that I did try out some Ernie Balls again the other day, but it kind of just reaffirmed my feelings.
I would quite like to try the Dunlop Super Brights. I've heard good things about them. I'm a big fan of Josh Paul, who's the bassist in Daughtry. Cool. If you've not checked him out on Instagram, he is a monster bass player. Like, I never saw it coming. Like, it's all double thumb slap stuff with envelope filters and short scale fuzz tones with flat wound strings on them. Like, he's really and he looks the part as well. But he uses Dunlop Super Brights with a Stingray. He has a lovely Stingray. I think he's got the Dark Ray actually, which is quite cool.
Woo.
I know.
Wow. Well, I wouldn't expect that from Daughtry.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've seen Daughtry live. They were opening for Nickelback years ago, but I never expected that. But anyway, the stuff he puts on Instagram is amazing. I really do recommend you take a look at him. But he uses Dunlop Super Brights, which is stainless steel. But I have never really, I don't think I've ever given stainless steel a really good go.
No, I'm trying to remember if I did one time with I think there was an early ball. Oh no, it was at the Cobalts. I can't remember what they're made of. But I didn't really like those very much. But no, I'm going to say no that I haven't either.
No.
I don't think. So maybe that's some homework for us both. Go away and come back next time when we have to re-record this again. Thank you so much. Let's swiftly move on to the news. This is where the musical interlude will be. Ba, 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 ba.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
You do know I'm not actually going to put an interlude in now, and that's
fine. I can go again if you want.
Oh yes, please. On a nice clean plate. Nice. That's the second one. I'll use both.
Excellent. I really hope you do.
I'll send you the money of the royalties for that. It's fine.
Thank you.
When I actually make some money. So the news this week is chock-a-block. We, as I said, some of these news items might be a little old hat to you at home now if you're really top of your game and know what's going on, because we're recording this a bit later than we normally would. But I kept the news items the same because there's not been that much since, and these are some really cool bits of news that I want to talk about. Out the gate, the biggest one, Fender Player Plus. We have got all new player series bases. Well, I say all new player ones. They're not replacing the old player series. This is the Player Plus. So if we think of the player series being the Mexican versions of the American standard series, these are the Player Plus is the Mexican version of the Ultra. So they're like top of the range, high end Fender basses. So on here we've got high mass bridges. We've got a 2-band active preamp with an active and passive switch. We've got some noiseless pickups, PJ configurations, or just a jazz single in the jazz bass, of course. And just higher end components, and they're retailing for just under £1,000. Really interesting move for Fender. Oh, and of course we've got some like crazy finishes as well. Like I know I'm going to offend you, Chris, by saying that I'm not like huge on the green, but I know you are a big fan of that new green. And we've got some like different fades as well, which are polarizing. I think some people are like, that's disgusting. Some people are like, yes, give that to me now. First off, what do you think about all these new Player Plus series? What's your favorite thing about them?
It is an absolute Yas queen. I give me that green PJ. Yes, please. I love it. I think they look absolutely fantastic. I think it's a pretty solid price point for the specs as well. I mean that PJ's got a 3-band EQ, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're right. I said 2-band, but wow. It is a 3-band.
Is it got is it a sweepable mid as well?
That's my good didgeridoo impression. Shall I look this up? Let me have a look. I'm on their website now, and the first thing I saw was a big advert for the green Player Plus. And I'm not going to lie, that was the first time that I went, yeah, actually, that's quite nice.
There we go. I'm getting you
Oh
around.
no. It's going to be an expensive year.
I've got a shopping list of gear. I have got a shopping list.
So it just says on Fender's website that we've got an 18-volt active preamp in there with boost and cut for treble, bass, and mid. So we don't have any mention of going through the frequency range on there. But regardless, there's some great features. I'm glad there's a mid control on there because the mid is a really big part of a P bass. And so to be able to control that to your heart's content, great, brilliant.
Also, a lot of the problem I have with a lot of the active circuits is if you've got a free band EQ and let's say it's fixed points, for example, the bass might be like all the way down at like 80 hertz. The middle one will be like 500 hertz, and then the treble one will be like 5K. Like it'll be a really high frequency. Whereas if it was up to me, I would rather have a bit more control over like an 80, a 1.K, and a 3K. That would suit me better.
I think that's something that you get mostly in like more affordable preamps, is they've got these wild frequency ranges that you just don't need.
Exactly.
I found like I had a Ibanez TMB 100, really, really cheap bass with a 2-band preamp on there, and it was just so hot. But like, why would anybody want this? Like, it was crazy. But I don't know. I'm sure that's not the case with these more high-end Fenders that we've got here. I really like the silver smoke finish. I'm not gonna lie. It's the only one I really like out of like the fade finishes. Like the jazz basses have got crazy colors going from like red to yellow and then a blue to white.
Yeah.
I like the one that goes from black to white, which is the silver smoke on the P bass. I think that looks awesome. I'd love to try one. They don't have a passive tone control though, so for a lot of people they might not like that. But these are probably, if you're buying one of these, you're using that active preamp, surely. Yeah, I can't imagine many people are going to buy these and run them passive all the time, or want. I don't think it's really aimed at people that want to roll the tone off.
I think so too. I think the only problem I have is I'm always a little bit scared if the battery runs out on stage, because at least if it's a passive one, or at least it has a toggle, you'll know, the tone's disappeared on the active circuit. Right, I'll flick it over to passive, and at least I can get through the gig. Whereas, like my go down, for example, is active. It's 100% active. So if the battery goes, I'm going to have to take it off really quickly and just grab another one and just crack on, really. So maybe I would always like to have a switch, even if it was like a dip switch at the back, and you had to like click it in. Just, you're never going to use it on stage, but it's like a fail safe just in case.
Yeah, and these basses have that switch, which is ideal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for putting it into, you can run it passive.
Oh, it's like they built it for me. Amazing.
It's going up that list slowly and slowly.
Oh God. To be fair, I'm not going to be able to get hold of a Tim Comerford Stingray, so maybe this will have to do instead.
This will have to quench that thirst.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that I have had that happen on stage before, where the batteries just went. But the problem was that it was with a Sire M7, and that bass has got like a million knobs and switches on it.
Yeah.
And it just went, and I was like, oh no! But the volume difference was so big that it took me ages to get my tone kind of back to a place that it was before, and I was relying quite a lot on that preamp for the tone, and that was a mistake that I learned from then. It was quite a long time ago. But so I'm always a bit wary of like active preamps and active pickups. So yeah, really exciting. Looking at the reactions online from people, some people are absolutely loving them. Some people are not loving them. They're saying like, what are all these horrible colors and all this design? Ooh, stick to what you know. I think they're damned if they do, damned if they don't.
I know, but also people saying like, oh, stick to this and stick to that. It's like, great, that product is still in stock.
Yeah, exactly. They've been doing that for years.
It's like when people say like, oh, like a band's changed and I don't like them anymore. Like, I don't know, the one that people always use is, people start using Architects as an example quite a lot now. Or Bring Me the Horizon. Like
Paramore.
Paramore, like, oh, I don't like the new Bring Me the Horizon stuff. I prefer the old stuff. That's more than fine. Those albums are still available for you to listen to and stream, and you can still go and listen to that. But that band is now moved in a different direction. They've evolved as an artist.
Yeah,
but it doesn't disappear. An album's not a finite resource, and it's the same with a bass. If you're like, oh, I don't like this new active PJ configuration with a high mass bridge, you should stick to a traditional P bass with flats. That's great. You can still buy that.
Yeah, you can buy that anywhere. They're never not going to make that.
Exactly.
But it's really exciting to see them doing some more things because, with Squire doing loads of exciting things with the Paranormal series and the new Affinities and, all of the different colors and some roasted maple necks that you're getting on the contemporaries, all really cool stuff that I have found myself being way more excited by Squire than Fender recently because they've just been doing all these vintage reissues all the time.
I think
how many times can we just redo the same thing over and over again?
Exactly.
So I'm glad that they're going in this direction.
It's cool to see a very established brand like Fender also maybe go after the modern market a little bit more. Like, for example, I love the sound of modern basses. Like, I love the sound of Dingwalls, the headless Ibanezes, or Ibanez. Don't know what the plural is of Ibanez. Ibanez. And all these contemporary models like the headless stuff and the crazy, like, what are they called? Kiesel basses and stuff. But visually, I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist. Like, I like a jazz bass. I like a P bass look. I like 100%. I like a Rickenbacker. But I want that modern, punchy, mid-range, heavy tone. But I also want a headstock. And maybe not a multi-scale.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're on the same page there. I like modern tones with vintage looks, and these new series is kind of marrying those together. I kind of go about mine where I like the more vintage simple bass, like just a straight up P bass passive, and then running it through lots of preamps and distortion to give it a more modern sound.
Exactly,
having like vintage underbelly that's pumping it through.
That's pretty much what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that is, speaking personally, I think that just sounds great. Awesome, they look really cool. Let's move on to another bit of Fender news, which hasn't quite made the headlines everywhere, but I thought it was too cool not to mention, and that is that the Japanese factory have done a limited run of the Fender Katana. So these are kind of like flying V looking basses with a P bass pickup. They're originally made in 1985 with a Squire on the headstock. I think it was Hama Okamoto, sorry if I've butchered that name, that it was the artist model of. So now they've brought them back under Fender, and I don't like flying V's, but I love this. I think they look so cool. They've done it in I think it's a black with a white pick guard, like a white with a torch shell pick guard, and then the singing star of the show is the shell pink with a black pick guard on there. They're so 80s. The headstock is like nothing I would ever want, but I love it in this context. I think they look really cool. Have you seen these?
I have, and I want one as well. I kind of want to go against the mold with this, so I want the shell pink one, but I don't want to play like 80s stuff on it. I want to put flat wounds on it, and just sit there with a Boss OC2 on the wubby setting, and just play like trap hip hop bass lines and slides and stuff. But it's so cool. That pink one is so cool. I love it. I think it's brilliant.
Absolutely. And it's not that expensive. By the way, I can totally see you rocking one of these playing that music. I think
I would also just play a flying V bass with like Dead Romantic, just to be like, come on, you know, the bass player deserves a bit of the limelight now. Look at my big pointy instruments.
Can it be a Dean as well? So the headstock is like going off in like a V shape as well.
I really wanted one of those when I was a teenager. Like Matt Hafey from Trivium had one with like the Japanese rising sun flag on it. And it had a Floyd Rose and like whatever. I think it was DiMarzio pickups and the big pointy headstock. And I was like, I want that so badly.
Well, I'm hoping that, that you can get your hands on one of these katanas to get close to that.
Absolutely.
They're about, if my calculations are correct, they're about £1,250. So it's not too bad, really, for a new and like vintage reissue and limited run out of the Japanese factory. That's a pretty good price. Of course, I think you need to get them imported though, so it's probably like double that again.
Yes, unfortunately, unless you do the thing where you go on holiday with an empty guitar case and then come back with a guitar in it and be like, "Yeah, I brought this with me."
Whoops.
Whoopsie! How did that get in there?
Just put it in the overhead. You're like in the overhead storage in the plane, just not in the case. Just shove it in there.
Yeah, I think I'll find I brought this with me.
Yeah, it's fine. Do you have anything to declare? No, definitely
no, nothing at all.
So let's move on to some more news. A little bit of news here for a little amp that's come out from Joyo. Joyo are a Chinese manufacturer making affordable versions of other pedals normally, but now they've started bringing out their own stuff as well. So they have brought out the 50-watt bass heads called the Badass bass amp, and on the amp itself there's a capital B, lowercase a, lowercase d, and then capital ass. So it's the ace. They've tried to make it look like it says bass, but it just looks like it says ass on the end. And I hope it doesn't sound like ass. It's £126, 50 watts. It's one of these little lunchbox heads. For me, I don't really. To run up against a drum kit, I want at least 200 watts. I run 500 watts in my live rig, without, of course, going through the PA system as well. But just for band practice and stuff, I don't normally have that. So I like to have a 500 watt amp. Well, that's the kind of what I go for. 50 watts. Is that really going to get you very far if you're not DIing it?
It's not going to be. It's not going to be good enough for. Well, it's not loud enough for any live situation. But I'm sure it's more than fine for like playing at home. Maybe because some people just like playing instruments at home and they've got no interest in doing it on stage. Look, I really like Joyo. I think Joyo are a great brand. I used to own tons of their pedals when I was a teenager. Like just starting out, and I want to try a fuzz pedal, or I want to try chorus for the first time.
Yeah, and 100%.
I can't really spend £90 on an MXR pedal or a Boss pedal, but this thing for 25 quid got me more than close enough at the time. They have I'm not sure which. It's a Boss digital delay, a DD6, DD7, one of those that they do, and it's one of the more expensive ones. It's like £60. But it's amazing. Like, it's so good. It's got like 2 switches, tap tempo. You can put modulation on the wet signal. You can EQ the wet signal. You can like save 2 or 3 presets, I think, as well. And like hold the button down to select them. Like, that's cool. And
that's really cool.
Which is very inspiring when you don't have any money.
Definitely. And I think that's a great point, that it's kind of this, it gives you this accessible stepping stone into gear that you're interested in. I was exactly the same, because I think it was like my 3rd ever pedal was a Joyo, and it was a compressor, and I've had compressors ever since, because I fell in love with this Joyo and I thought it was brilliant. And then I started to understand them, and then wanted to use them a bit more. Then I got something else, a bit more expensive. And so I think they're brilliant for that kind of thing, and they really pave the way in their market. They do a great job. But going back to this head, I kind of feel like if you're going to practice at home or whatever, then you might just be better off with a combo. Probably save a bit of space.
True. You get like
then if you want to change it out and have something else, then I guess you can. But not something that I'll be investing in. But I'm glad that they're stepping. They're not forgetting about us bass players as well.
And it's got ass in the name.
Sign me up, baby. If there's ass there, I'm there. Take that out of context, please.
Cut that out. Hello, editing, HR.
Please no. I need to put some kind of watermark below that. So the last bit of news is from G&L, which is they brought out the L2500 series 750, which is essentially just their L2000 series 5-string, but with wider string spacing. So the full 3/4 inch spacing. So just like because a 5-string isn't just a 4-string with a string added on. The string spacing is a little bit smaller, so that the neck isn't like this massive chunk of wood in your hand. And it means that when you pick up a 5-string, it takes a bit of getting used to, especially if you're like me and you play really hard with a pick everywhere and your hands going up and down the bass. You've got to work a bit harder to mute some of those strings. So you're not just like whacking them all at the same time. So this kind of helps to combat that a bit. It's just an interesting change, really. I think this is a cool idea. And it's nothing necessarily that new, but I can't see myself wanting that, to be honest. I think, you said you've got quite little hands. Do you think you'd be able to cope with that?
It might be a little bit big for me. Like, I would really like to try it, because I have noticed that my live, at least, when I've played a 5-string, just a normal 5-string like we're used to, there's a bit more. I'm hitting excess strings with the pick, because there's just a little bit less maneuverability on the picking side. So it'd be cool to try it, absolutely. But my gut tells me it would probably just be better for me to just stay with that standard 5-string, slightly smaller spacing. But I can see why it would work for a lot of people. Like, I imagine it'd be a lot better if you were really into slap and you did it thumb up instead of thumb down, where you're slapping with your thumb through the string. I can see why that would probably be better, because it means you've got a bit more leverage.
But yeah, I would really like to try it, to be fair. I like to think I've got quite long, like, salad fingers, but I still don't know. I still find it a bit daunting, the sound of this big bit of wood. Oh my god, there's so many sound bites you can take out of this, isn't there?
Absolutely.
And with that, we'll swiftly move on from the news into our second question. Another musical interlude.
We've already got one for this. It's fine.
Oh, great. Well, there'll be another one. So this question comes from good friend Stephen McGrath, who says, does buying gear inspire you to play, or does playing inspire you to buy more gear? I feel like this is a very loaded question.
Stephen, I see what you're doing here. I see what you're trying to bait me into thinking, and I'm not accepting it. I am not falling into the camp of less is more, tone is in the hands. You don't need that extra. You don't need that 7th dark glass pedal on your pedal board. I disagree. But
let me be happy in my own space, damn it, Steve.
Let me use this massive pedal board to compensate my mediocre playing. Okay, just let me have that. We can't all sound like you when you've just got a DI box. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, exactly that. The bottom line of it is that I think it works both ways. Does buying gear inspire you to play? Yeah, of course it does. There's,
totally.
If I whack a chorus on, I am inspired to play something different, and that makes me want to pick it up and play something different. If I've got an envelope filter, an octaver, it inspires all different playing. So I think buying that gear and wanting to get something in, if I'm particularly into envelope filters at the minute and I want to get one on the board, then I'll just try and buy one. But that inspires me to play, and then it works the other way, because does playing inspire you to buy more gear? Yeah, of course it does, because I might be playing and I'd be like, I kind of want a new distortion, or I want to try. It tastes change, So I got to combat that by buying more gear.
If I spent as much time practicing as I do browsing YouTube for reviews of the same Dark Glass B7K or a Boss bass overdrive, I think I'd be a lot better bass player than I actually am.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier. Exactly. You're keeping my views going, mate. I was thinking about this earlier, actually, when I just realized how long I've been playing bass, and I was like, oh my god, I should be a lot better than what I am. Christ. I was like, oh dear, I need to practice more. And yeah, I think there is stuff in that, and like I said at the start, kind of jokingly, about tone in your hands. I think there is a lot of tone in your hands, but that doesn't take away from the functions that gear has. And not in just like a high quality bass, because I think there's amazing things that you can do with affordable gear. But I'm kind of thinking more about pedals and effects in this instance, because that's what inspires me in terms of different sounds. At different basses, I go through phases massively. Like I'll be like, oh, I really like stingray tones at the minute, or oh no, I just want to play a P bass all the time.
Absolutely.
So I think it always changes as to what I'm inspired to buy and play. That being said, if I get a bass and I don't like it, or I don't like the look of it, and I don't like the feel of it, I'm not going to want to play it. So I think it's really underrated and plays a massive role in wanting to, inspiring me to play. So I think it works both ways with gear.
I think so too.
Haha, Stephen, we didn't fall for your trap, and we don't feel bad. We just feel even better about it.
Yeah.
Yay.
Us 1, Stephen 0.
Well, Stephen, I'm sorry. We do love you, really.
Yeah, we do. We're just being annoying. We didn't appreciate the challenge against the fact that we use gear to hide our mistakes.
No, we're just compensating, not for small willies, but for
no, absolutely not. Yes, of course. Yes.
Let's move on swiftly to the next segment. So this segment is one of my favorites because it is called That Tone You Own. So leading up to this recording, Chris sent me a rather tasty, a beautiful sound. What am I saying? A wonderful audio clip of got there at the end. Oh my God.
Chris sent me
hello.
Thing.
Yeah, he sent me something and I opened it up and I loved it. He sent me a sound clip recording of what he considers to be, one of his sounds, a signature sound. And let's take a listen to it now. Damn, if any of you at home know me, you're going to know that is ticking all the boxes and tickling my pickle big time. I love the way that is sounding, mate. It sounds awesome. Let's break it down. So what bass are you using for that tone there?
Well, it's my Godan. It's my RG4. So I guess the signal chain itself is, well, start off a pick. Obviously, I'm probably 90% of the time a pick player. We have one song, maybe two, 1.5 songs in our set I play with my fingers, and then the other 10.5 I'm a pick all the way through. So pick Dunlop 88, and then the green one, and then D'Addario strings. It's the Godan with EMG pickups. And then we go into the magic, the secret sauce, if you will.
There's a lot going on here. So I'm excited.
There's a lot going on. We've talked about this before. Now, to break it down, really, it's if you were to divide it down into its simplest components, it's the quad cortex by Neural DSP. Like, that's the hardware. It goes into the quad cortex, and then there's an XLR out into the mixing desk. And then there's a bit of compression and a bit of EQ, but it's nothing. It's nothing crazy. It's just stuff to kind of like carve it out a little bit to sit with the drums better. Like you'll notice in the track, the drums are there, and then they cut away, and then they come back to kind of show it all fits together. Because basically, bass guitar on its own doesn't matter. It's what it sounds like in front of everything else. For me, at least, it's what it sounds like with the drum kit and with the guitars. You've got to compliment that. Like, I'm going for best supporting actor. I'm a Tom Hardy as opposed to a Brad Pitt.
A lot of people would argue that is better.
Yeah, I would also argue it's better. But the tone itself, so the actual sound it's a dark glass Adam, so the big green Nolly Get Good pedal, and within that is a compressor, distortion. So this is all inside the pedal, what I'm saying here. Compression, distortion, cab sim, and then if I remember correctly, at the end there's a multi-band compressor that kind of keeps the low end tight. However, Inception style, I'm not using the Adam pedal. I am using a capture of the Adam pedal using the quad cortex. If you're still with me here,
This is big time science. Oh
it's
my gosh.
magic. So basically, I've captured a pedal, and then the entire signal chain is just me playing a capture of the pedal, and that's it.
So obviously, with I'm just going to be naive here. When you've captured that, what kind of then? Because there's so much going on in that pedal. What parameters have you then got to fiddle with on the quad cortex?
A bit of EQ, and that's basically it, really. So when you capture a pedal, you're taking a snapshot of what that is set to at that time. So whether it be the setup of an amp, a cabinet, a pedal, you're capturing the state that is in at this point. And then you can use the quad cortex as a touchscreen. So you just touch on the capture and it opens it up, and you've got a gain, and a bass, a mid, and a treble, and a volume. And they're mainly there for you to kind of tweak it to get it just like it is on the against the original material. So the Adam pedal, for example, has got a compressor inside it where you can control the ratio and the amount of gain going into it. You can have everything from like 4 to 32 to 1, like it's crazy. And there's a lot of different cab sims. I can't control any of that. I've just captured my Adam pedal with the settings I like, and then I have that in a little box. Think of it like Ghostbusters, where they catch the ghost and put the ghost in the box. I'm doing that with equipment.
Oh my God, don't you let that quad cortex out of your sight. Don't let it open up. You don't want to see the horrors that come out of it.
Exactly.
I think that's a fantastic way to put it. And it just sounds so good. So it sounds like you've got that sound from the Adam that you liked. Right, I want to keep this on my board at all times, but without taking the Adam around with me. What is this? What is this taken from? This bass line?
Oh, this is from one of our tracks called All Talk, which is already available. It was like a soft single. We released it. It was our first release just before Yesterday came out back in April. And what you're hearing is part of the chorus. And just a quick point you mentioned there that made me laugh. You just talked about taking the quad cortex with me everywhere, so I don't have to take the Adam with me. The Adam is like a quarter of the size of the quad cortex, so I'm not saving any. I'm not saving any room. If anything, I've made it worse for myself.
But you've got everything in one.
Yeah, exactly. I've got everything, and the Adam by Dark Glass is amazing. If you want that sound, like if you like progressive metal and you want to sound like Nolly from Periphery, that is you buy that, you turn it on, and you load up stock preset number 1, which that kind of is. I think I've just turned the compression up, to be honest, and you're in and you're done. But I am a tweaker. I like to fiddle.
Take that out of context.
That's me cancelled. But check his hard drive.
Don't open up his quad cortex, whatever you do.
Yeah, exactly. Don't open that cortex. I like messing around with a different sound. So, for example, when I sent you that track, that was what we were using to track that part of the album. I now use a completely different sound on some of the later songs, and I use a completely different patch live. And I've changed that every show. So every show we've done and every rehearsal we've done, I've used either a different capture that I've done myself at home, or I've used one of there's like 80 stock presets just for bass. Like there's one where, it's trying to be John Stockman from Carnival. And it's like the tone of like Goliath or Simple Boy. And then another is clearly trying to sound like Duff McKagan. And then there's loads of them basically, but I've been trying a different one every set and every rehearsal to try and find exactly what I want, because I think I'm one of these people where I'll never be happy in life, But with music,
Yeah, that's I can relate to that as well, where I'm like always tweaking on the go. And it depends on the room that you're in. Even in the same room in a band practice situation, if you're like setting up slightly differently. I mean, I know you're running lots of in-ears.
yeah.
But like for me, how I relate to that, I'm never in the same place, exactly each time. So there's always a bit of a different sounds. I'm always tweaking as I go, and my taste is always changing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you got to adapt to that as well.
And I'll take broad strokes. Like I'm not talking like, oh, today I'll boost the mids and today I'll cut them. I'm talking like, well, today I used an Ampeg SVT model with the low button clicked in, and then this gig I'll try a Galleon Kruger, and then I'll try a Harkey, and then I'll try a Mesa Boogie Strategy 88, and today we'll use the vintage microtubes. Tomorrow we'll use the B7K, because these are all digital amps that I'm telling you about, by the way. So they've got captures, which is like a snapshot, but then they've also got amps, like a plugin, for example. So the SVT has the entire front panel of an SVT. So there's a mid control with the frequency switch that the actual SVT has. Yeah. And there's the high button and the low button. So I'm at a bass buffet every gig.
You're making me salivate at this bass buffet.
They're available now at neurodsp.com.
#ad.
#sponsor me.
Not an actual sponsor. This is incredible stuff, and it leads very nicely into our next question, so we can kind of just continue this conversation there. But let's do another musical interlude, shall we?
Bass interlude.
You just have to have the last word, don't you?
Bum.
Flipping heck. Not having this guy back for a third time. So this takes us on to the big bass debate. And this comes from Sam on Instagram, who asks, modelers and multi-effects processors, are they the future?
Do we need to answer this?
Yeah. Yes is the answer. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
No. Well, yes and no, I think. Like, there's always going to be space for real amps, I mean, sometimes physically not space for real amps, but no one is ever, what am I trying to say here? There's always going to be people that will want a real amp and that will poo-poo having anything digital. That's just a fact. There's always going to be
absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, sometimes you just love an amp. I personally love having a pedal board and love having pedals that I can tweak on the go. I'm quite a tactile person. So that doesn't mean that I'm running up to people and grabbing their knobs and giving them a twist. That just means that I'm, grabbing my pedals and tweaking on the go. I quite like the physically being able to touch something.
You will get in quite a lot of trouble doing that in public, though, just so you know.
Please do not try any of this at home, anyone. I mean, you could try that at home by yourself.
Oh, yeah, try it at home. That in a safe, consensual environment, but don't go running down the street twiddling other people's knobs. That will not end well.
No, and even in an actual band situation, you don't want to twist their pedal knobs either, right?
Because no, that'll get you smacked in my book. Absolutely.
Either way, you're getting big time smacks.
Absolutely, Swift backhander is coming to you.
So with. I'm an owner of the Line 6 HX Stomp, and I use it for all my videos, and it's great. It's functional for that. But I found myself being a bit overwhelmed and diving into all this tweaking, and I was like, there's so much here, and it's, although it's intuitive, like it's really easy to use, it's still not as easy as twiddling a pedal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was the big thing for me as well. So I'm a long-term Kemper user. I've had a Kemper for 4 years. I've gigged, 2 or 3 gigs a week every week for well over a year with the Kemper. And it sounded really great, really big fan of it. Not the easiest thing in the world to mess with on the fly. Like if you're thinking, I'm a bit subby today, or there's a particular note that's really popping out, I'd love to get a bit of an EQ on it and just dip it. you can't really do that. But the Quad Cortex, when you look down at it, it's like a pedal board to an extent, as in the touch screen, which is nice and big and legible, super bright. To change anything, all you've got to do is touch it, and it opens that pedal up, and it's like the pedals in front of you. Like, they've got some dark glass pedals in there where you open it up, and it's like, aha, drive, blend, grunt switch, overall tone, close that, click away from it, and like, oh, I want to mess with the compressor, and then you click on it, and it's like you've opened up a compressor pedal, ratio, blend. There's no like static moves. Everything you need to do, even if it's a simple thing like we played a show in London about a month ago, and for reasons I don't quite understand, that I was coming in really hot on the desk. And we don't know. We never really found out why, because I never changed the volume because I run it on full all the time. And you're able to just swipe down from the top on the standard page that you look down. Swipe down from the top, and there's a full input and output menu list, which is all metered as well, like a DAW, which is amazing. Nice. So I very quickly, in 4 clicks, I'd turn the output down by like 6 dB, and it was great. And it's just really, really nice. So for me, I'm all the way, take that 8x10 and throw it in the bin. You don't need it.
Yeah. Like, and I know your setup on stage is, where you can, is to have it kind of run one DI, get the DI going to front of house, and then an output running to an amp on stage.
That's correct. You can run 4 separate signal paths in the Quad Cortex. That's why it's called the Quad Cortex. It has 4 processors.
Didn't know that.
So if you wanted to, you could go all out and have 4 completely separate signal paths split into frequency bands or something crazy like that, and then sum it all to one output if you want to. But I just have 1 signal chain that goes to front of house, and that goes in my in-ears, and then I have 1 other separate signal chain, which, to be honest, has a compressor and a bit of EQ, and that's it. And that goes to my dark glass amp, which runs either whatever the venue's got, or just a little. I have a little Laney 210, which serves me a 410. Sorry, Laney 410. One of the Nexus cabs, which is really light, really loud. Really like it, and that's just there to kind of tickle the backs of my knees on stage, which suits me just fine. But for small shows, I'm just in-ears. I'm nice and simple.
Yeah, and that's, you're getting the best possible mix then, aren't you, in the in-ears?
Yeah, exactly.
And in that setup, in this scenario, you have everything you need, because let's say the PA goes down, or there's an issue, or for some reason there isn't enough inputs, or there's some reason. I'm sure there's a story for everything when it comes to sound guys and PA systems, that you cannot use it, and you're like, oh great, okay, fine, I'll use the amp on stage, or vice versa. If there's no amp, or like you say, no room for an amp on stage, fine, I'll just run it direct. Luckily, as bass players, we can afford to do that. And guitarists can as well now with items like this. So I think the Quad Cortex is like a step in the next direction in the future, because it's all about accessibility. Like you say, the Kemper isn't that accessible, really. The big learning curve. The Line 6 stuff, the Helix is close, and the HX Stomp that I've got is okay. It's easy to use in terms of how it's set up, but it takes a lot of getting used to. There's a lot of like double clicking buttons, and there's some like touch bits on the buttons where you can assign it to it. But some things don't quite make sense, or it's like it takes like 10 clicks to do something, whereas on a pedal it would do like 2 twiddles of a knob, So yeah,
I get it.
It sounds like with the addition of that touchscreen on the Quad Cortex that is a next step.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I mean, all the buttons. All the buttons on the actual hardware unit turn as well. So if you don't want to use the touchscreen, you can click on an amp and turn actual dials to change the settings, which is I don't do, but I prefer to use the touchscreen. But it's really cool. I've heard the Axe effects is quite difficult to get your head around as well.
Yeah, I'm not really big on the Axe effects, to be fair. I'd rather have a Kemper over that, and particularly for bass as well.
Well, I've heard I'm a big Beartooth fan, and the bassist of Beartooth uses an Axe-Fx, and his tone sounds really good. He sounds amazing. But I've never tried an Axe-Fx.
You're right. I forgot he'd done some stuff on Instagram recently.
Yeah.
Put some demos out, and it does sound so good. And like you listen to like the older, I don't know, I think it was all recorded through like guitar amps as well, or the old like on the original EP that they let out. The bass tone on that is insane, and it's a huge part of the mix on the
totally.
As is bass in any mix, but in that particularly, it's super aggressive and present in there, and it's a big part of their sound. So maybe that's a sign that it is the future. Then, obviously, there will be people listening to this that are going, "No, thank you. I will stick to my head, to my camp. I'll stick to my head of my camp, my head of my cab.
You'll stick to Mein Kampf." Whoa!
Oh no! That's a whole nother level of cancelled.
I thought that's episode 3.
Yeah,
edit that out.
Bring it on, baby.
Well, those people, it's perfectly fine if you're an amp guy. All I'm saying is, you come back to me at 3:00 in the morning when you're dragging that 8x10 and that huge SVT Classic up a flight of stairs that weighs like 26 kilos, and I will wait for you to do it, and then I will walk up with my tiny backpack and go to bed.
No thanks. And like people, there'll be naysayers that say, "Well, I can tell the difference." To be fair, if you put them A and B side by side, you could tell them apart. Bass less so than guitar, even. Like guitar, you can probably tell a bit more.
Well, I think it's the other way around, actually.
Oh, really?
Because with bass guitar, because it's bass guitar is a very functional instrument, at least in my eyes. Like, it's there to serve. It's like a foundation. It's part of the foundations of a house. And I think if there's a particular frequency that's like a bit lacking, so let's say a modeler is rubbish at anything under 90 hertz, for example, that's going to really affect you from a bass perspective. Or let's say it's rubbish at anything above 5K. That's going to really affect a guitar, for example. Or 5K is a bit high, but do you know what I mean? But I have sat, and I kid you not, I have sat in our recording studio, which is I don't want to toot my own trumpet, but it's a very good recording studio, with the Kemper, with the Quad Cortex and the amp that we're modelling, mic'd up in another room, and we've captured it, and we've A-B'd it, and me, our singer, our keyboard player, who's a producer himself, and our guitarist, who's a multi-platinum selling producer. He's got great ears. We've all sat there and gone, I can't tell the difference at all. Like, we've faced the other way and clicked it and tried to trick each other. And then even if we have noticed the difference, it's so little that as soon as you got another instrument next to it or put it in a mix, you can't tell the difference. And for me, that's good enough, because the only person who is listening to a bass guitar on stage or at a venue really loud is me in my in-ear mix. Everyone else is getting it at the appropriate volume for the mix.
100%. And like you say, if it's soloed, nothing else, you might be able to pick something apart to identify that that's the digital one.
Yeah.
In a recording, less so. Live, even less so.
Impossible live.
I really want a Quad Cortex now. So thank you very much for just ruining my YouTube channel that focuses on affordable gear.
I'm terrible. I am very sorry. If it helps, I do think the Helix is amazing as well. I very nearly bought a Helix, and it was partly your fault. A few other parties, but mostly you. And I got an opportunity to get one of these, so I did. But I forgot the point I was making here. Basically, the Helix is great too. And if I'm ever near you, obviously I'll bring it and you can have a play around with it.
Good man. That's what I like to hear, because I would love to play it, to know if I because they're not cheap things.
No, they're not cheap.
if you're not sure about it, like it's an expensive risk to take, like to get into that kind of thing. Because I found when I first got my HX Stomp, I had to sit on it and for a few months and get used to it because I instantly didn't like it. I was like,
Yeah.
there's a lot to this. There's it was a barrier to playing, honestly, because it made me a bit down in the dumps because all the presets were really rubbish. That's one thing I don't like about Line 6.
Well, I've heard about that. Like the main tip for the HX Stomp and the Helix ranges, don't bother with any of the stock presets, which is actually, I'm pleased to say, is the opposite with the neural stuff. Like all of the stock presets are usually done by like artists who use it or beta testers, or the bass patch I'm using messing around at the moment is made by Doug Castro, who's the CEO of Neural DSP.
Oh, nice.
It's just a Sansamp into an SVT, and it sounds
Oh,
amazing.
brutal. Yeah. Well, that's that's the sound I want. But getting that out of the HX Stomp is, a challenge sometimes. You've really got to dive in, and that put me off straight away. I was like, I wanted this for the ease and to have everything at my fingertips, but it was a big learning curve, and it put me off of playing because I was like, oh great, I'm gonna have to pick up and play and try and work this thing out again. But once you get there, it's great.
That's no fun. I mean, going back to Stephen's question earlier, yes, gear can motivate you, but I tell you what, gear can demotivate you very, very quickly. Like I've had band practices where something wasn't working, or gigs, or practicing at home where like a new pedal isn't quite behaving the way I was hoping it would, and nothing will make me give up quicker. Like as soon as that happens, I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. And because I get quite a lot of, now with the channel, I get quite a lot of gear in. And so I find my attention span with gear is reduced as well. And like, if I don't like something immediately, or if I don't like one thing about it, I'll be like, well, I'll sell it and get something else, So I kind of had that issue as well. So you're totally right. As amazing gear is, it can sometimes have that opposite effect. That sounds like we're going to end on a bad note, but it's not. That's just a fact, and we love gear. We absolutely love it.
All gear is good.
Exactly.
All gear is good. Budget means nothing as well.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You can get fantastic tones, whatever the price range.
Absolutely.
Just got to know your stuff. So that brings us to a close of this podcast episode. I really, really hope that this has worked this time, because it has been an incredible episode. I think I've loved having you on both times, Chris. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you for having me on for the 8th time. I really appreciate it.
Take number 12.
4 hours later.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you, both yourself and the band?
Well, you can. I'm only really on Instagram, but I have a Twitter, but I haven't posted in months on it. So Instagram, I'm pretty simple. It's that guy on bass, all one word. And then the band is going to be Dead Romantic Band on Instagram, and I think that's the same on Twitter and Facebook as well. If you stick us into YouTube and Google, those search engines do their thing, and we're at the top of the list fairly quickly. You can catch one of our music videos. You can also Google us, and we've got a website as well where we've got all the merch and the tour dates and all that lovely juicy stuff.
Go and check it out. Keep in touch. Go and let Chris know that you enjoyed this episode. Let me know that you enjoyed this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below, and I think you should bloody hit that subscribe button extremely hard. Imagine someone's come up and twisted your knobs on your pedal, and you're giving them a backhand that hard. That's how hard you've got to hit that subscribe button.
Just imagine someone's walked up to you, and it's your big moment. It's the only time in the set as a bass player you're above the 12th fret. Like, it's a big deal. And just as you're about to slide up that glorious roasted maple neck, they click your tuner pedal on. Right. That gut reaction is how hard you need to slap the subscribe button.
No, thank you. I've now got that soundbite I can put into every video.
You're welcome.
My God. I know we're closing off here, but that has reminded me of a time when, because like my favorite part of a set is like that first note when
Oh,
you're like, "Oh, come in, boom," you know.
that's my least favorite part of the set by far.
Is it?
Hate it.
I love it because it's like because we've got like an intro rolling on a backing track, and then we
Yeah.
come in with this sub drop, and like, yes, I love it. I did that one time, and my wireless battery died literally a second
Oh,
before that first note.
no.
So I went, yeah, did this big headbang just to nothing. I was like, oh no, and then I had to like scramble around for a cable.
Oh,
I was just getting like anxiety and PTSD about that.
no, nah. That first, like, the first minute of the set is my least favorite part because there's still a few nerves lying around, you know, but they're pushed to the side pretty quickly. And for me, by the time I hit the second song, I am like, the train has left the station, let's go.
Nice. He's going full steam ahead, baby. Choo, choo, choo.
Exactly. Choo, choo, choo. The Fat Controller laughed. You are wrong.
If you're making any Thomas the Tank Engine references, you're very welcome here. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on, and everyone at home for listening. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.